This is an absolute classic movie. This movie shows us the story of a man with a broken leg who's been stuck in his apartment for weeks, confined to his bed and his chair. From that single spot, he ends up solving a murder mystery just by watching out his window. The movie begins in Chelsea, Manhattan, where we're shown an apartment complex. One of those apartments belongs to Jeff, a photographer with his leg in a cast. Since he can't move around, he spends his days sitting by the window, bored, watching the lives of his neighbors. From Jeff's window, he can see into several apartments. Because it's the middle of summer and unbearably hot, most people keep their windows wide open. From here, Jeff observes a young dancer he nicknames Miss Torso, a lonely woman he calls Miss Lonely Hearts, a pianist, a newlywed couple, an older couple from the Middle East with a little dog, a sculptor who's always working on statues, and finally, Thorwald, a jewelry salesman who lives with his sick, bedridden wife. Jeff himself is a professional photographer who broke his leg on the job a few weeks back. The cast is supposed to come off in about a week. In the meantime, he's looked after by his nurse, Stella. Stella often teases him that he should settle down and marry Lisa, his girlfriend. But Jeff resists. He believes their lifestyles are too different. Lisa is a glamorous, high-society woman, while Jeff lives a rugged, adventurous life, often traveling to dangerous places for work. He doesn't want Lisa to compromise her life for him. Lisa, however, doesn't see it that way. She truly loves him and wants a future together. Every night, Lisa comes over for dinner. But one particular night, after she leaves, Jeff is once again watching out his window. The neighborhood is quiet, most people already asleep, when suddenly he hears a scream. A woman's voice yells, "Don't!" followed by the sound of glass shattering. Jeff can't tell exactly where it came from, so he shrugs it off and eventually falls asleep. Later that night, thunder wakes him. He looks outside and sees Thorwald in a raincoat carrying a briefcase, leaving his apartment around 1:55 a.m. About 40 minutes later, Thorwald returns only to leave again with the same briefcase. While keeping an eye on the other neighbors, Jeff notices Miss Lonely Hearts setting a dinner table for two, talking to an imaginary boyfriend who doesn't actually exist. It's heartbreaking. And that's why Jeff gave her the name Miss Lonely Hearts. Thorwald, meanwhile, returns once more, but again doesn't stay long. He heads back out with that briefcase. At this point, Jeff begins to get suspicious. The next morning, when Stella arrives, Jeff tells her what he saw. Thorwald leaving his apartment 3 separate times during the night, each time carrying his sample case full of jewelry. Stella brushes it off, saying it was probably work. But Jeff argues, at night, 3 times? That doesn't make sense. His suspicions grow stronger. He also points out that all of Thorwald's curtains have been drawn shut since morning. When Stella notices the curtains finally open, Jeff tenses up and tells her to step back. He explains that the way Thorwald is staring outside looks like a man who's paranoid, someone afraid he's being watched. Jeff looks through his binoculars and sees Thorwald peering down at the courtyard. Following his gaze, Jeff notices the neighbor's dog sniffing around Thorwald's flower bed. The dog's owner quickly shoos it away, but Jeff can't shake the feeling something is off. Soon after, Stella leaves for the day, handing Jeff his binoculars before she goes. Jeff immediately points them at Thorwald's apartment and sees him wrapping something in newspaper and placing several pieces of jewelry into his suitcase. Oddly enough, Thorwald didn't even go to work that day. Later that evening, when Jeff's girlfriend Lisa arrives, he tells her everything. He explains how Thorwald went out 3 times late last night, skipped work today, and how the blinds in his wife's room have been shut the entire day. Jeff is convinced that Thorwald has killed his wife. He even points out that earlier, Thorwald left wearing just a plain white undershirt, carrying a rope, and now he finally went into his wife's room, though he still hasn't opened the window. Lisa gets irritated with Jeff, telling him it's wrong to spy on neighbors with binoculars and invent wild stories. But Jeff insists he isn't imagining things. He argues his wife is sick. He hasn't gone in to see her all day. And besides, who brings ropes, knives, and saws into their apartment unless they're hiding something? Right in the middle of their argument, they see Thorwald hauling a huge wooden trunk out of the room. That's when Lisa begins to believe Jeff might be right. Something definitely feels off. She even agrees to help him. Lisa sneaks out to check details about Thorwald's apartment and phones Jeff with his address and name, but Jeff insists she head home afterward. That night, Jeff sees Thorwald's place is completely dark, with the windows wide open. Thorwald just sits there in the shadows. The next day, Jeff calls an old friend, Lieutenant Doyle, a detective. By now, even Jeff's nurse Stella believes something sinister is going on. Soon after, 2 delivery men arrive at Thorwald's apartment to carry away the large wooden trunk. Jeff is desperate for proof, so Stella rushes outside to jot down the license plate of the truck. But she's too late. The vehicle pulls away before she can get close enough. Eventually, Doyle shows up, and Jeff lays it all out. The knives, the saw, the rope, the suspicious trunk, and the sick wife who's suddenly disappeared. But Doyle isn't convinced. He argues if Thorwald really killed her, he wouldn't be sitting around in his apartment. Maybe his wife just went on a trip. Jeff pushes back, reminding Doyle that she was too ill to travel. Doyle promises he won't file a report just yet, but agrees to check into it. Later that evening, Doyle returns with what he thinks is an answer. He says the building superintendent confirmed Thorwald's wife went back to her hometown and even showed him a letter Thorwald received. The note read, "I've arrived safely, feeling much better. Love, Anna." But Jeff isn't buying it. He questions whether anyone actually saw Mrs. Thorwald board the train, or if Thorwald bribed the superintendent to lie. He urges Doyle to search Thorwald's apartment, insisting they'll find evidence everywhere. But Doyle refuses. If he broke in without a warrant and got caught, he'd lose his badge. Still, Jeff keeps watching. Through his binoculars, he sees Thorwald gathering more belongings and even opening his wife's handbag, which is still full of her jewelry. Later that evening, Jeff's girlfriend Lisa comes over, and he fills her in on everything he's seen. He tells her it looks like Thorwald is trying to run away. He's been packing up his belongings, and Jeff even spotted him checking through his wife's handbag, the same one she always kept close by, and looking at her jewelry. Lisa immediately agrees something's off. She says no woman goes on a trip and leaves behind the one bag she always keeps near her bed, and no woman stuffs her jewelry into a handbag. That would only damage it. If she really went away, she would have taken her jewelry with her. Just then, Detective Doyle shows up. He tells Jeff and Lisa that during his investigation, someone claimed they saw Thorwald and his wife leaving the apartment together the very morning after Jeff heard that scream. But Jeff and Lisa don't buy it. They argue that the woman seen may not have been Thorwald's wife at all, because if it were her, she wouldn't have abandoned her jewelry at home. Doyle still isn't convinced. He says Thorwald actually bought a train ticket for his wife, and he even checked that big trunk Jeff mentioned earlier. It was filled with her clothes. The address on the trunk matched Mrs. Thorwald's family home, and the police confirmed it was received there. In fact, Doyle insists Thorwald's wife herself came to pick it up. To him, that proves she went home and that Jeff's suspicions are just paranoia. For a moment, even Jeff and Lisa start to believe Doyle might be right. Maybe they imagine the worst, but before long, they hear a woman crying out in the courtyard. When they look out, they see that the neighbor's dog has been killed. The dog's owner breaks down in grief, and the sound draws every single neighbor out to their balconies. Everyone except Thorwald. Even though his lights are off, Jeff notices the glowing tip of a cigar inside his darkened apartment. Thorwald is sitting silently, listening, but he never steps outside. That strange behavior convinces Jeff, Lisa, and Stella that Thorwald must have killed the dog, probably because the animal had been digging around in the flower bed where Thorwald may have buried evidence of his wife's murder. Suspicion grows stronger again. They now believe the woman seen at the train station wasn't Mrs. Thorwald at all, and that Thorwald may have hidden the murder weapon or other evidence beneath those plants. Lisa boldly suggests sneaking over at night to find out. Soon after, they spot Thorwald scrubbing down his apartment walls, almost like he's trying to erase stains. Then, he starts packing again. Jeff hatches a plan. He writes a note that simply says, "What have you done with her?" He gives it to Lisa, and she slips it under Thorwald's door. Thorwald notices her, follows, and nearly catches her, but she manages to get away. Reading the note clearly rattles him. Lisa and Stella want to dig in the flower bed, but with Thorwald still home, it's far too risky. So Jeff distracts him with a phone call. Pretending to be blackmailing him, Jeff says, "I know what you did to your wife. If you don't want the police involved, meet me at this address." At first, Thorwald hesitates, but soon enough, he leaves the apartment. The moment he's gone, Lisa and Stella rush down to the courtyard and dig under the flowers, but they find nothing. Determined, Lisa sneaks into Thorwald's apartment instead. While she searches, Thorwald suddenly returns. From his window, Jeff panics as he sees Lisa trapped inside with Thorwald. He frantically calls the police, telling them there's a man attacking a woman at this address. Inside, Thorwald quickly realizes something is wrong when he finds his wife's handbag, which he had locked inside the suitcase, now lying out in plain sight. Suspicious, he checks and discovers Lisa hiding. He grabs her and demands to know what she took from the bag. Lisa had actually slipped his wife's wedding ring onto her own finger. She hands it back, but Thorwald switches off the lights, clearly preparing to kill her. Helpless, Jeff watches from across the courtyard, terrified. Luckily, the police arrive just in time and force Thorwald to open the door. Thorwald tries to cover himself, telling them Lisa broke into his apartment to steal. The officers prepare to arrest her, but Lisa subtly raises her hand, showing Jeff the wedding ring still on her finger, proof Thorwald's wife hadn't gone anywhere. Jeff realizes Thorwald has noticed Lisa signaling him, meaning Thorwald now knows someone is watching from across the way. The police still take Lisa into custody for breaking and entering, but Jeff sends Stella to bail her out. After that, Jeff calls his friend Detective Doyle and tells him Lisa's been arrested. He also explains that Lisa has Thorwald's wife's wedding ring, and if she were alive, she would never have taken it off. Jeff reminds him that on the night he heard that scream, Thorwald left his apartment multiple times with a suitcase. But if he was really leaving with luggage, why is all of his stuff still at home? Doyle reassures him not to worry. He's heading to the police station to get Lisa out, and then hangs up. Just as Jeff sets the phone down, it rings again. Jeff picks up, but there's only silence. At the same time, he hears footsteps slowly coming up the stairs, heading straight toward his apartment. His heart sinks. He's stuck in that wheelchair with a broken leg and can't run. Moments later, the door opens and Thorwald walks in. The room is pitch dark, and Jeff has tried to make himself invisible. Thorwald breaks the silence, saying, "You could have turned me in. Why didn't you?" Jeff stays quiet. Thorwald presses on. "I want that ring your girlfriend took from my apartment." Jeff tells him it's too late. The police have it now. Thorwald starts moving closer. Jeff's only weapon is his camera. He grabs it and fires the flash over and over again, blinding Thorwald with bursts of light to slow him down. But Thorwald keeps pushing forward. Meanwhile, across the courtyard in Thorwald's apartment, Lisa, Doyle, and the police arrive. They figured out Thorwald really did murder his wife. Back in Jeff's apartment, Thorwald lunges and starts choking him, ready to finish the job. Lisa sees it happening from across the way and screams for help. Doyle and the cops rush toward Jeff's place. Thorwald shoves Jeff toward the window, forcing him out onto the ledge, trying to send him crashing down. At the last second, police officers grab Thorwald and pull him off. Jeff loses his grip and falls, but luckily the cops below break his fall. He's injured again, but his life is spared. Thorwald finally confesses he murdered his wife, killed the neighbor's dog because the dog kept digging near the flower bed where he hid evidence, and even planted that letter in his mailbox to throw people off his trail. In the final scenes, Jeff is back in his apartment, now with both legs in casts. He's stuck waiting weeks before he can even walk again. From his rear window, he notices how life has moved on for everyone else. Miss Lonelyhearts, who once dined alone with imaginary company, is now happily spending time with the pianist across the way. The dancer's boyfriend has returned from the army. The couple who lost their dog have already adopted a new one. And then there's Lisa. She sits comfortably beside Jeff, pretending to read an adventurous book called Beyond the High Himalayas, showing she's willing to share his world of travel and photography. But as soon as Jeff dozes off, she sets it aside and switches to her fashion magazine, indulging in her own passions. And with that, the story comes to a quietly satisfying close. If you like this recap, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more.